Stop. Dad, the handkerchief has poison, don't touch it. Maya's voice pierced through the grand wedding hall like a siren. Gasps rippled across the cathedral as 400 guests turned toward the last pew, their elegant gowns and tailored suits rustling in confusion. At the altar, Elliot Granger stood frozen, one hand halfway to the breast pocket of his tuxedo, where the white silk handkerchief lay carefully folded. He blinked, slowly turning his head toward the girl who had shouted. "Maya?" he said, confused. She was standing now, trembling, her small fists clenched. Her voice cracked again, louder this time. "Please, Dad, don't touch it, it's poisoned. I saw her. She put something on it." The entire sanctuary fell into stunned silence. Elliot took a few steps forward, his face flushing with discomfort. "Sweetheart," he said gently, as if trying to soothe a child mid-tantrum. "Come here. It's all right." Maya didn't move. Her eyes were wide, terrified. "You don't understand. I saw her do it. She dipped your handkerchief in something last night in her room. It smelled like chemicals. It burned her hand." "Maya," he sighed, crouching slightly and lowering his voice. "I know this is hard. You're still adjusting. I know you miss your mom, and Isadora isn't trying to replace her. I'm not making this up," she cried. "Please believe me." From the first row, Clara Granger, the ever-pristine older sister of Elliot, shot up with a glare so sharp it could have sliced marble. "Security," she hissed. "Get that child out of here. This is absolutely disgraceful." Isadora, standing beside Elliot in her fitted white lace gown, let out a soft laugh. But there was no joy in its only calculation. She stepped forward gracefully, placing a delicate hand on Elliot's arm. "It's okay," she said in her smooth, soothing tone. "She's confused. This has been a lot for her. I understand." But Maya's cries didn't stop. They grew louder, breaking through the heavy veil of suspicion now settling over the guests. Murmurs rose first uncertain, then questioning. Elliot frowned. He turned back to his daughter, a flicker of hesitation crossing his face. "Maya," he said cautiously, "you need to calm down. This isn't the time or place. We can talk after." "No," she interrupted, digging into the little purse slung across her chest. With shaking hands, she pulled out a small flash drive and held it high. "Watch this, please. Watch this, Dad. It's on the car camera. Marcus copied it for me." Isadora's fingers tightened around her bouquet. Maya's voice cracked again. "It shows her. She dipped your handkerchief in something. I saw it with my own eyes and now it's all on video." All eyes shifted from the little girl to the bride. Isadora's smile faltered just enough to crack the porcelain illusion. "That's absurd," she said lightly, though her voice tightened at the edges. "This is a child's imagination. Grief does strange things." "Then prove it," Maya said, suddenly, her tone sharp with clarity. She walked slowly down the aisle, her little black patent shoes clicking on the marble floor. "Put on these." She reached into her coat pocket and produced a pair of disposable gloves, the kind Elliot used when cleaning rare books in his study. "Use them to pick up the handkerchief, then wipe her face with it." And just like that, the truth trembled on the edge of silence. In that stillness, with a little girl's trembling voice and a pair of gloves, the power in the room began to shift. If her courage touched your heart, leave a comment below, tell us where you're watching this video from, and let's see how far her voice can reach. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this, delivered to you every day. The room fell deadly quiet. Isadora went pale. "Go ahead," Maya whispered. "If it's safe, she won't mind." Elliot stood frozen, torn between two impossibilities. The room seemed to hold its breath. Isadora began, then stopped. Her arms remained limp at her sides. She didn't move. Her smile was gone. A beat passed, then another. Someone coughed in the audience. A guest whispered too loudly, "Why wouldn't she just prove it?" The spell cracked. Elliot's hand slowly reached for the handkerchief, not with fingers, but with the gloves Maya had just handed him. He pulled it free and held it up to the light. That was the moment everything began to unravel. And Maya stood there, breathing hard, eyes red, but unblinking. This was only the beginning. Elliot Granger held the handkerchief between his gloved fingers, staring at it as if it had become an alien object, something no longer stitched with memories, but pulsing with silent threat. The white silk no longer looked like a symbol of tradition. It looked like a trap. He turned his gaze slowly back to Isadora. "Is it true?" he asked, voice low but firm. Isadora blinked, then let out a soft, incredulous laugh. "Darling, you can't be serious. I'm asking you a question." She drew herself up, her veil trembling with the subtle movement. Her voice remained composed, but her smile had vanished. "Of course not. I would never. This is absurd, Elliot. She's just a child, she's clearly overwhelmed." But Elliot wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at Maya. She stood in the center aisle, fists still clenched at her sides, shoulders trembling. Her eyes, however, were steady. They held something that froze him more than any accusation ever could. Heartbreak. Not fear, not rage, not even defiance. Just that quiet, wounded look only a child could give when someone they love chooses to doubt them. He'd seen it before, in the eyes of his late wife, when he'd missed another dinner, in the eyes of his sister Clara, long before she turned brittle, and now, in Maya, a girl who had lost her mother, her home, and now maybe him. Isadora stepped closer, her voice smooth again, rehearsed. "Elliot, please, let's go to the vestry. We'll sort this out privately. This doesn't have to ruin our day." Maya spoke again, her voice breaking. "If you wipe her face with that cloth, you'll know. That's all I'm asking." Murmurs echoed louder now, sweeping through the pews like a rising tide. Elliot's longtime business partner, Paul Chandler, leaned forward from the second row. "You know, I've seen that kid grow up," he muttered to Clara. "She's sharp as a whip, not a drama queen." Clara rolled her eyes but said nothing. Her jaw was locked tight. Elliot hesitated. The cameras were rolling. Reporters were already whispering headlines into their smartwatches. His entire empire was built on control public perception, message clarity, narrative flow. But now, all that control sat on the tip of a white silk handkerchief. He turned toward the priest, who still stood motionless near the altar. "Can you give us a moment, Father?" The priest nodded silently, stepping aside as Elliot turned fully to Maya. "You said Marcus helped you?" Maya nodded, her voice softer. "He copied the footage from the car camera. You can ask him. He saw it too." Elliot drew a long, deep breath. "Is he here now?" She hesitated. "He was supposed to be. He might have been stopped." Isadora flinched, almost imperceptibly. But Maya saw it. Elliot saw it too. He stepped forward, toward Maya, slowly, then looked down at the gloves she'd handed him. "You want me to use this cloth on her face?" "Yes." The silence that followed was louder than any organ note. Elliot looked at the cloth one more time, then at Isadora. "Will you allow it?" She took a step back. "I will not be insulted like this in front of the entire city." "That's not an answer," Paul Chandler called out. Elliot frowned. "Isadora, I've asked you if it's harmless. Prove it." She laughed again, brittle now. "Elliot, you've built your name on trust, on leadership, and now you're letting a child, your emotionally unstable daughter, derail everything we've built? Answer the question." Isadora froze. Her expression changed. Not the fluster of a falsely accused woman, not indignation, but calculation. She was weighing odds, not fighting for innocence. And in that moment, Elliot knew. The stillness broke with the sound of footsteps. A young man in a black suit, one of the church ushers, came running down the aisle, out of breath. "Sir, Mr. Granger, there's been an accident. Marcus Cole. They found his car down on 5th and Broad. Someone cut his brake lines. He's in the ER at St. Vincent's." Maya gasped. "Elliot Ballard." Isadora said nothing. The usher added, "They said he asked for you." And for Maya, a wave of whispers crashed again. Phones were already buzzing with news. Elliot turned to the priest. "Please, tell the guests to remain seated. I need to speak with my daughter." He took Maya gently by the arm and led her away from the aisle, down a side passage. Her hand was cold in his, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. Once they were out of sight, he crouched in front of her. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." Maya took a breath and started. The kitchen hallway. Isadora dipping the handkerchief. The faint chemical smell. The red marks on her own fingers when she tested it. The leather case she never let go of. The car ride where Maya overheard the words. "No one will suspect a thing if it's slow, if it looks natural." Marcus helping her pull the footage. Her plan to show it during the reception, if she couldn't stop the ceremony in time. When she finished, Elliot sat back on his heels, staring at the floor. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" "I tried," Maya said quietly. "You didn't listen." He closed his eyes, pain stabbing somewhere deeper than guilt. He had promised her protection, security, a home. But when it mattered, he had dismissed her fears as childish noise. Elliot stood up slowly. "We're leaving. What about the wedding?" He looked down at her, voice steady. "There isn't going to be one." They returned to the sanctuary, now buzzing with low voices. Isadora stood at the altar, her fingers twitching at her sides. Elliot approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying over the silence. "Thank you all for being here. I deeply appreciate your presence, but this ceremony will not continue." Isadora's face twisted. "You're throwing this away? Based on that child's—" "I said that's enough." His tone had changed. The boardroom tone. The tone that ended negotiations and won wars. "Security, please escort Miss Lorne to the waiting area. She is not to leave the premises until questioned." Someone in the back called out, "What about the poison?" Elliot held up the handkerchief. "This will be tested immediately. If it comes back clean, I'll apologize publicly. But if it doesn't," he looked at Isadora, "then the person I trusted almost murdered me." As security closed in, Isadora dropped the bouquet. Her eyes met Maya's. For one breathless moment, her mask dropped. What glared back was cold, furious hatred. Then, just like that, she smiled again and allowed herself to be led away. As she disappeared down the corridor, Elliot turned back to Maya. She was crying again silently this time. He reached out and pulled her close. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you," he whispered into her braids. "But I believe you now." In the back of the church, some guests clapped. Not politely, not socially, but with raw relief. And for the first time that day, Maya let herself lean into her father's arms not as a burden, but as someone finally seen and believed. 3 hours after the wedding that never was, Elliot Granger sat in the back seat of his black Lincoln Town car, the silk handkerchief sealed in a Ziploc bag on the seat beside him. His tuxedo jacket lay folded in his lap, his tie loosened, and a silence hung over the interior that even the city traffic outside couldn't break. Maya sat next to him, shoulders hunched, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. She hadn't said much since they left the cathedral. She'd barely touched the juice someone had handed her back in the rectory, and when the press had swarmed the front steps, she'd instinctively backed behind Elliot's legs, as if afraid to be visible again. He glanced over at her, noticing how small she looked 9 years old, but carrying something far heavier than any child should. "We're going to the hospital," he said gently, watching her flinch just slightly at the sound of his voice. "To see Marcus." She nodded but didn't speak. "Do you want to tell me more about the video?" he added after a moment. Maya hesitated, then dug into her little purse and pulled out the flash drive again. She held it out to him like it was sacred. "Marcus made 2 copies, she whispered. In case something happened to him." Elliot took it carefully. "And this has everything?" She nodded. "From the car cam. The day before the wedding. She didn't know it was recording. She was on the phone saying she couldn't wait anymore. That the timeline was perfect. That the handkerchief would make it look natural." A muscle in Elliot's jaw twitched. He stared straight ahead, lips pressed thin. "She said, by the time people figured it out, it'd be too late to trace," Maya added. "She said, 800 million was worth waiting for." Elliot turned to her slowly, eyes narrowing. "She said that exact amount?" Maya nodded. His temples throbbed. That number wasn't public. The value of his media holdings, his private accounts, even the terms of his revised will only, a handful of people knew it. He'd updated the documents 2 weeks ago, to include Isadora as a beneficiary. He swallowed hard. "She knew." "She did," Maya whispered. They arrived at St. Vincent's through the side entrance, bypassing reporters camped by the ER. A security guard let them in quietly, and within minutes, they were standing outside Marcus's room. The old driver lay in the bed, a neck brace keeping his head straight, one arm in a sling, but his eyes lit up when he saw them. "Boss," Marcus said with a strained smile. "Kiddo." Maya rushed to his bedside, grabbing his free hand. "You're okay." "I'm in one piece," he said. Bit stitched, a little cracked, but I've been worse. Back in '72, Elliot stepped forward, cutting him off softly. Marcus, thank you. For everything. Marcus nodded slowly. You saw it? Not yet. Maya told me what's on it. Then you'll want to watch it soon, Marcus said. It's convincing. I believe her, Elliot said. I believe both of you now. Marcus's eyes softened. Took you long enough. That earned the faintest laugh from Maya. I need to be sure, Elliot said. Not just for my safety, but for her protection. If this goes to court, if that woman's working with anyone. She is, Marcus interrupted. I overheard one of her calls. She mentioned backup plans, plural. She wasn't acting alone. She was too calm, too prepared. This wasn't her first time. Elliot straightened. She ever name anyone? Not clearly. But I remember her saying, tell Dimitri it's on track. Dimitri? Elliot repeated. No last name? Number. But she used it like she expected him to know what it meant. Maya let out a soft gasp. I think I've heard that name. Both men turned to her. Twice, she said. Once when she was on the phone in the hallway. She said it really fast, like she didn't want anyone to hear. And once in the kitchen, she dropped her phone, and I picked it up. The last text had a name at the top, Dimitri, and then it disappeared. Elliot exhaled. This goes deeper than I thought. He pulled a USB reader from his briefcase and plugged the flash drive into his laptop, turning it toward Marcus's tray table. Maya and Marcus both leaned forward, watching the screen come to life. The car footage began crisp, clear, time-stamped. Isadora entered the vehicle in her usual elegance, settling into the back seat while on the phone. Her voice was cheery at first, but the moment she thought she was alone, it changed. It's in the lining, she said. Soaked into the fibers. He'll start sweating first, then the dizziness. It'll look like heat exhaustion. By the time they run any tests, I'll be arranging the funeral. Elliot froze. The footage continued. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out the embroidered handkerchief, laying it flat on her knee. Then from a small glass vial, she added a few more drops of a clear liquid to the center. She didn't even flinch this time, just dabbed at the edges with a tissue and folded it like a gift. Perfect, she whispered on the video. He'll die holding the thing his wife gave him. How poetic. Maya looked away. Marcus's hand tightened slightly. Elliot said nothing for a long moment. Then, finally, he closed the laptop. She would have done it, he muttered. She would have let me die at the altar. No, Maya whispered. She wouldn't have waited. Elliot raised an eyebrow. She had a backup plan. I think she was going to do something worse at the reception. When people were dancing, when no one would see. Elliot looked at her for a long time. You said she burned herself when she tested it? Yes. The skin on her fingers turned red. Do you still have that video? Maya hesitated, then shook her head. She deleted it. From her phone. I saw her right after I caught her testing it. I was too scared to stop her. You did enough, Marcus said firmly. You saw what grown adults missed. You saved his life. No, Maya whispered. I just didn't want to lose another dad. The words struck Elliot in the chest. He hadn't thought of himself that way. Not really. He was her guardian, her provider, her late mother's dying wish. But not her father. Until now. He moved closer, knelt beside her, and gently touched her hand. You didn't lose me, Maya. You saved me. And from now on, I will not just hear you. I will listen. Tears welled in her eyes. A knock interrupted them. A detective in a charcoal suit stepped into the doorway, flipping open a badge. Mr. Granger, I'm Detective Fields. I need to ask you and Miss Bennett a few questions. Elliot rose. We're ready. The detective nodded. First off, thank you for preserving that footage. Second, we just got word. Miss Isadora Lorne isn't who she claims. Her real name is Ilsa Volkov. Interpol's been looking for her for 5 years. Maya's eyes widened. She's been connected to 3 deaths in Europe, Fields continued. All men, all wealthy, all natural causes until now. This footage will crack the case wide open. Is she still in custody? Elliot asked. Yes, but she's lawyering up, and fast. She's not saying a word. She won't have to, Marcus muttered. Her eyes said plenty. Fields nodded. We're arranging protection detail for Maya. If this is part of a network, there could be risk. Elliot didn't hesitate. I want armed security at the house. No exceptions. We'll handle it. As the detective walked away, Maya looked up at Elliot. Does this mean it's over? He paused, then answered honestly. But it means we're finally fighting back. And Maya, tired, bruised, but unbroken, nodded. She was ready. The following morning dawned cold and gray over Manhattan, as if the city itself had sensed the weight of betrayal that hung over the Granger estate. Elliot stood by the window in his home office, a mug of untouched black coffee cooling in his hands. Downstairs, Maya was finishing her breakfast under the quiet protection of 2 armed guards dressed in civilian clothes. One sat near the foyer, pretending to read a newspaper. The other monitored a live security feed from the guest bedroom Elliot had hastily converted into a command center. He hadn't slept. He'd replayed the footage from Marcus's car over and over again, memorizing every word, every smirk on Isidorano, Ilsa Volkov's face. He'd trusted that woman, opened his heart after 10 years of grieving his late wife, and she would have let him die, right there at the altar, in front of Maya. His grip tightened on the mug. Just then, a soft knock came at the door. "Come in," he said, not turning. Maya stepped inside, clutching a small drawing in her hand. "I made this," she said quietly. Elliot turned and saw a crayon sketch 3 figures holding hands. One tall man in a suit, one girl in pigtails, and a third person with a heart drawn on her chest, crossed out in red. "It's us," she said, "before and after." He knelt beside her. "That's very brave of you. I don't want her near us again." "She won't be." "Ugh." Maya hesitated. "Then why are there men outside?" "Because people like her don't act alone. Detective Fields thinks someone else may still be watching." Her eyes widened. "Like who?" "I don't know yet, but I intend to find out." Later that afternoon, Detective Fields returned, this time with a folder thick with documents. "We pulled financials on Ilsa," he said, setting the file on the table. "Offshore accounts, shell companies, untraceable phone records. But there's one name that keeps showing up." He flipped the folder open and pointed to a highlighted section. Dmitry Vasilov. Russian, American. Ties to several consulting firms, which is code for laundering operations. "We've had eyes on him for years, but nothing stuck." Elliot leaned over the file. "And what's his connection to Ilsa?" "Unclear. But we have evidence they were in Prague together 3 years ago under aliases, and your name showed up in one of his recent calls, encrypted, but flagged." "So I'm a target," Elliot said flatly. "Likely," Fields replied. "But not just you. Maya, too." Elliot's stomach nodded. "Why her?" "She's a witness. And Dmitry doesn't leave loose ends." Fields laid down a new photo. It was grainy, taken from a street cam in Brooklyn. A tall man in a leather coat, short gray beard, sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. "Taken yesterday," he said, "outside Maya's school." Elliot's blood ran cold. He didn't approach anyone, Fields said, but he waited there for 10 minutes, then left. "We're still tracking the plates on the black Mercedes he got into." "I want Maya pulled from school immediately," Elliot said. "Private tutoring, round the clock guards." Fields nodded. "We've already spoken with the Board of Education. They're authorizing emergency homeschool clearance." Downstairs, Maya sat quietly with Marcus. The old man, arm still in a sling, had insisted on staying at the estate. "I don't like this," she whispered. "Me neither," Marcus replied. "But you're safe here, and you're not alone. I heard them say that man came to my school." Marcus looked at her, eyes firm but kind. "He didn't get to you. That's what matters. But what if he tries again? Then he'll learn a hard lesson about underestimating the little girl who stopped a murder plot." Maya smiled faintly. Later that night, after Elliot made a series of urgent phone calls, he entered his private vault room. Inside, he removed an old wooden box, dusty, untouched for over a decade. Inside were photographs, an old journal, a dog tag, and a small velvet pouch. He stared at the dog tag for a long moment. Granger, Elliot, O+ Marine Force Recon. He had locked that part of himself away when his wife died. But now, it was time to remember who he had been. The next morning, he visited Maya in the garden. She was sitting on a stone bench, watching the koi fish. He knelt beside her, placing a small pendant into her hand. "This used to be mine," he said, It has a GPS tracker built in. If you ever feel scared, just squeeze it. Like magic? He smiled. Better than magic. It talks to satellites. She squeezed it and grinned. But later that day, the shadows returned. A package arrived, addressed to Maya. The return address was blank. The staff, trained and cautious, scanned it and called Elliot immediately. He arrived just as the bomb squad confirmed there was no explosive, just a single envelope inside. Elliot opened it, heart hammering. Inside was a photo on old one, of his wife, pregnant, standing beside a man Elliot didn't recognize. On the back, in looping cursive, "Do you really know what she kept from you?" Elliot's heart stopped. He stared at the photo for a long time, then slid it into his pocket. That night, long after Maya had gone to sleep, he sat alone in the study. Fields was gone. The guards were posted, but he felt utterly exposed. He took the photo out again. The man in the picture, he looked familiar. Not from life, but from files, news clippings. A man accused of espionage in the 90s, declared dead in 2001, but no body was ever found. And now this. Elliot dialed a number he hadn't used in 15 years. A gruff voice answered. "You better not be joking." It's Granger," he said. "I need you to pull a favor." Silence. Then, "You've got 10 seconds. I need a full background check on Ilsa Volkov, including any known associates in U.S. intelligence. And I need it fast." "You in trouble, Elliot?" "Not yet, but I'm about to be." The voice grunted. "I'll call you back in 2 hours." Elliot hung up. Across the hall, Maya slept soundly, but her dreams were restless. She saw the church again. The guests, frozen in fear. The moment her father looked at her and didn't believe her. The ache in her chest had returned. That cold space where her mother used to be, where trust used to live. She turned over in bed and whispered into the dark, "Don't let him stop believing me again." But she wasn't the only one awake. Across the city, in a rented penthouse, Ilsa Volkov paced like a lioness in a cage. Her ankle monitor blinked red, and her lips curled into a snarl. She picked up the burner phone and dialed. "Plan B," she said into the receiver. "Execute." Then she smiled cold and sharp. This time, the girl won't be so lucky. It was 3 a.m. when the phone rang. Elliot jerked upright, heart pounding before his mind could catch up. The caller ID flashed a string of digits scrambled. Secure. He answered on the first ring. "Granger." A low voice on the other end. "I ran the check." Elliot got to his feet, moving to the window, staring out at the city lights that shimmered like a sea of lies. "Ilsa Volkov," the voice said, "isn't just a con artist. She's a recruiter." "For what?" "For Project Hades. Black Ops program dismantled in 2009 officially. But you and I both know what dismantled means." Elliot's jaw tightened. "She lured foreign assets, seduced them, blackmailed them, married them, always with a longer game. You were just next on the list." "And Dmitri?" "He runs the cleanup." There was a pause. "One more thing. I traced that photo you got. The pregnant woman in it. That wasn't your wife." Elliot's blood froze. It was Ilsa, from 15 years ago, pregnant with Dmitri's child. "That girl you thought was your daughter Mayashi's not biologically yours." Elliot stumbled back as if struck. The phone nearly slipped from his grip. "You okay?" the voice asked. He didn't answer. "I'll send the full report encrypted, but you need to decide. Fast. If she's not your daughter, you may be her only protector left." The line went dead. At sunrise, Elliot sat at the dining table, his untouched coffee steaming in front of him. Maya skipped into the room in her fuzzy slippers, hugging her sketchpad to her chest. "I drew us again," she said, eyes bright. He looked up slowly. His heart broke in half. She looked so much like the girl in that old photo. "Maya," he said gently, "do you remember anything from before you came to live here?" She blinked. "Just a lady with yellow hair. She used to give me chocolate coins. But that's it." Elliot nodded slowly. He reached across the table, took her small hand in his. "You know I love you, right? That won't ever change." Her smile widened. "I love you too, Daddy." But inside, his world was breaking apart. By late morning, the house was under tighter surveillance. Agent Fields returned with new intel and concern darkening his usually steady face. We've been monitoring known Veselov assets. One of them used a burner phone to access a pediatric medical file. Maya's file. Elliot's gaze turned to steel. How much did they access? Everything. Birth history, DNA records, adoption documents. They're trying to figure out what you know. And what I don't? Fields hesitated. I'd advise you prepare for the worst. If this is about control, about legacy, then Ilsa's not done. They may not want Maya back. They may want her gone. Elliot stood abruptly. Then we go on a fence. How? He walked to his desk, opened a hidden compartment, and pulled out a key. We take Maya to where this all started. The drive to Vermont was long, winding through forests painted gold and crimson with early autumn. Maya fell asleep in the back seat, her arms curled around a stuffed bear. Elliot watched her in the rearview mirror, haunted by the memory of that photo, the news that kept unraveling everything he believed. Fields rode shotgun, flipping through files. There's a clinic in Barre, he said, supposedly shut down after a malpractice scandal. But it was also a front for Project Hades. Rumor has it Ilsa gave birth there. And if we find records? Elliot asked. Then we confirm lineage. More importantly, we find out what they want from Maya. They arrived at the clinic by noon. The building was boarded up. Graffiti streaked across the brickwork. Windows smashed. But the basement remained untouched. Behind a rusted door, Fields found a keypad. He punched in a codone he claimed to have gotten from an old contact at Langley. The door hissed open. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and time. Old hospital beds lined the walls. Metal drawers half open, charts scattered. Elliot moved toward a locked cabinet and forced it open. Inside were files, neatly stacked, alphabetized. Fields scanned the folders. Volkov. He pulled one. Here. He handed it to Elliot. Inside were ultrasound scans, blood work, hospital wristbands, and one photo Ilsa, holding a newborn. The baby had a tiny birthmark on her left wrist. Elliot's breath caught. He knew that mark. Maya had it too. So it's true, he whispered. Fields looked grim. Which means they'll come. Not for you, but for her. That night, back in New York, Ilsa sat in a luxury suite with Dmitry Vasilov seated across from her. She wore a silky black dress, but her eyes were cold steel. They took her out of the city, she said, to Vermont. And Dmitry poured vodka into 2 glasses. Then we follow. She knows too much, Ilsa added. And he's remembering who he used to be. Dmitry raised a glass. Let him. It won't matter. The girls are leverage, and Elliot Granger is still a man with something to lose. He took a sip. She didn't. Instead, she stood and stared out the window, down at the glowing city. This ends at the gala, she said. What gala? She turned back, smiling. Elliot's annual foundation event, his precious tribute to his late wife. He'd never cancel it. Dimitri's Grinweiden it. And if he does show up, Ilsa said, we finish what we started before the girl screams again. Meanwhile, in Vermont, Maya stood in the woods just outside the clinic, staring up at the stars. Elliot approached her, draping a warm coat over her shoulders. Cold? A little, she said. They stood in silence for a long time. Do you miss her? Maya asked suddenly. Who? My mom. My real mom. Elliot looked at her, then knelt. I don't know her, but I miss your laugh when it's not here. I miss your questions when you're quiet. I miss you when you're not near me. And that's what a dad does, Maya. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Even if I'm not really yours? He touched her cheek. You're mine in every way that counts. She burst into tears, collapsing into his arms. He held her for a long, long time under the stars. But just beyond the tree line, the red beam of a sniper scope swept silently across the darkness, settling for a split second on the back of Elliot's head. Then it vanished. The hunter had seen enough, and the game had only just begun. The lights of the Manhattan skyline sparkled like a lie dressed in diamonds. Inside the Granger Foundation's ballroom, the chandeliers dripped elegance, illuminating rows of powerful men and women in black tie finery. They moved with poise and polished smiles, unaware of the storm tightening its grip around them. Elliot stood near the grand entrance, dressed in a classic tuxedo, his posture composed but coiled. His eyes scanned the room, noting faces, watching for shadows. Maya wasn't there. She was miles away under heavy security, tucked safely in a cabin upstate with Agent Fields and a pair of trusted operatives. At least, that's what he hoped. Tonight was bait. He greeted donors and shook hands with dignitaries, all while his thoughts burned. If Ilsa and Dmitri were going to make a move, this would be it. The place was riddled with cameras, bodyguards, and silent alarms. But Elliot knew monsters like them didn't walk through doors. They slipped through cracks. "Sir," a voice murmured from behind him. One of his personal security guards stepped close, whispering, "The woman you asked us to track, she just entered through the rear garden. Alone." Elliot turned slowly. "Ilsa?" The man nodded. Dressed like a guest, carrying a small handbag. No weapon detected. "No weapon doesn't mean no danger," Elliot said. "Keep eyes on her. No engagement unless I signal." As he moved toward the rear of the ballroom, his heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. It always did before the fire. He stepped through the side doors into the garden, lanterns swaying gently above a marble path. There, near the roses, stood Ilsa. She wore midnight blue, her hair swept back in effortless elegance. She looked every inch the poised socialite, but Elliot saw through it now. "What a beautiful evening," she said without turning. "Almost makes you believe the world is kind." "Cut the poetry," Elliot said, keeping a measured distance. "Why are you here?" She turned, lips curling. "To congratulate you, the man who almost married me, and now orchestrates a gala in honor of the wife he claims to have loved. Touching." "Well," he didn't blink. "You're not going to talk your way out of what you did." "I don't need to talk. I need you to understand something," she said softly. "They'll never let you keep her." Elliot's jaw tightened. "I mean, look at you," she continued, trying so hard to play the hero. "But deep down, you know you were just the next mark, a signature on a paper. And Maya? She was always the asset." His voice dropped. "She's a child." She's a weapon," Ilsa snapped, and for the first time, the mask cracked. Her mind, her lineage, her immunity to a genetic neurotoxin, they bred her for something. "Elliot, you were just the cover story." He stepped forward, close now. "So you admit it." She smiled again. "I admit nothing, but I will give you one last chance. Turn her over. Disappear. You'll be paid more than you can imagine. You'll even get a clean reputation. The press will adore you." "Number." Ilsa leaned in. "You're going to regret this." Elliot held her gaze. "Not tonight. Tonight, I came prepared." With a subtle gesture, two agents stepped out of the shadows. Ilsa's eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in recognition. "Well played," she said. "But I didn't come alone either." She reached into her handbag. Elliot tensed, motioning to his men. But instead of a gun, she pulled out a remote. She pressed a button. The lights flickered inside the ballroom. For a moment, music faltered. Then screams rang out. Elliot turned and ran. Inside the ballroom, a thick haze had filled the air. It wasn't smoke. It was something else, chemical, translucent, odorless. People stumbled, gasped, clutching their throats or collapsing. Panic surged. Some rushed the exits, only to find them sealed shut. Security scrambled. Emergency protocols activated. But it was already too late for some. Elliot pulled out his encrypted radio. "Seal all HVAC vents. Get fresh air in here now. No casualties, do you hear me?" He turned to Ilsa, who remained by the garden arch, completely calm. "You poisoned them?" he shouted. She tilted her head. "It's not poison. It's persuasion. A neuroagent. Temporary paralysis and mild memory disruption. Designed to make people forget just the parts I want." "Why?" She smiled. "Because this wasn't about Maya. Not tonight. It was about the board, the real owners, the ones who needed to forget what your foundation uncovered last quarter." Elliot stared at her, horrified. She continued, her voice almost soft. "You were digging too close, Elliot. Trafficking routes disguised as medical shipments, defense contractors funding private labs overseas. You connected the dots, and they were watching." "You knew," he whispered. "I didn't just know," she said, stepping back into the shadows. "I'm the one who gave them your files." She vanished into the night. Elliot stood frozen. The ballroom behind him echoed with cries and sirens, but his mind raced elsewhere. Maya. If they had pulled this off in the city, what were they planning upstate? An hour later, Elliot's jet roared down a private runway, headed north. On board, Agent Fields met him with grim news. The cabin's empty. Elliot's eyes narrowed. What? Agents were found unconscious. No sign of forced entry, no alarms. Maya's gone. Elliot's knuckles turned white as he gripped the seat. She knew this would happen, he muttered. She was never after me. She wanted Maya back. Fields leaned forward. Then we get her back. Elliot nodded once, cold fire in his eyes. And we burn everything in our way. Deep in the Vermont woods, Maya awoke inside a black SUV. Her hands were tied. A masked man sat beside her, silent, arms folded. The vehicle bounced along a dirt road, heading somewhere remote. Across from her sat Ilsa. Maya's lip quivered, but she didn't speak. Ilsa reached into her purse and pulled out a small necklace. It was Maya's own she'd lost 2 years ago in the park. I kept it, Ilsa said. You were always mine, you know. Maya glared at her. You lied to me. I protected you. You tried to poison Daddy. Ilsa paused. No, sweet girl, I tried to save him from himself. Maya turned away, tears burning in her eyes. He's not perfect, but he's kind, and he listens. Ilsa's face darkened. That's weakness. No, Maya said, raising her chin. That's what makes him strong. Ilsa stared at her, eyes unreadable. You've changed, she whispered. You're not the little shadow I raised. Maya said nothing. Ilsa leaned back. We'll see how long that spirit lasts where we're going. And outside, the trees grew taller, darker, as if the forest itself knew justice was on the hunt, and Elliot Granger was coming. The wind howled through the thick canopy of pine as the SUV carved its path deeper into the Vermont wilderness. The unpaved road trembled beneath the heavy wheels. Inside the vehicle, Maya sat upright, wrists bound but eyes unflinching. Her young face was streaked with dried tears, but her spirit remained unbroken. She'd stopped crying hours ago. Now, her silence was sharper than any scream. Across from her, Ilsa sat in eerie composure, legs crossed, leather gloves resting on her lap. Her eyes flicked occasionally toward Maya but revealed nothing, only calculation. The driver said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence inside the vehicle was thick with unfinished intent. The necklace Ilsa had shown Mayatha, one she'd claimed to have kept still, lay on the center seat between them. Maya stared at it, but not with longing. It was a relic now, like everything from her life before the engagement. Before the betrayal, Ilsa finally broke the silence. You should try to rest. Where we're going, you'll need your strength. Maya didn't answer. You're not a prisoner, Ilsa continued. You're the key. You've always been the key. You just don't understand it yet. My dad will find me, Maya said, her voice calm but edged. Ilsa smirked. Your father is clever, but not clever enough. By the time he finds where we're going, it'll be too late. The work will have already begun. What work? Work that will change everything. Your immunity is only the beginning. Your proof that it's possible to manipulate selective neurogenetics without ethical barriers. They wanted to destroy the research, bury the truth. But I protected it. I protected you. You poisoned him, Maya said, her voice rising slightly. I prevented a mistake, Ilsa replied coldly. You think he would have survived with the truth? That the board wouldn't have cut him out, discredited him? I offered him a way out. You ruined it. No, Maya whispered. You did. Ilsa didn't reply this time. She turned her gaze to the window as the SUV turned onto a narrower road, barely more than a trail. Pines pressed closer. The light dimmed under their ancient branches. In the front seat, the driver finally spoke. 10 minutes. 200 miles south, Elliot stood in the operations hub of a temporary command post, erected on the edge of a lake house resort. His face was stone, his voice a blade. Where's the satellite feed? He asked. Agent Fields, bleary-eyed but focused, tapped into the touchscreen. We have a drone. Thermal tracking. Put a vehicle leaving the secondary cabin at 2:43 a.m. It took a northern Ruteno public roads. We lost it near Mount Patterson, but infrared shows tire tracks heading deeper into private forest land. Elliot leaned in. Owned by? Shell Company. Untraceable. But the land was once part of a military research facility decommissioned and sold 20 years ago. Elliot nodded. Get me a chopper. Already warming up. As Elliot turned to leave, Agent Fields called out, Elliot, she's smart, but you know Ilsa. She doesn't act without layers. You walk in unprepared, she'll twist everything. I'm not walking in, Elliot said, slipping a tablet into his inner coat pocket. I'm bringing hell with me. The facility sat like a ghost in the heart of the wood steel bones under moss, concrete halls swallowed by time. The main structure, shaped like an L, had only one illuminated wing. A single landing pad stretched beside it, covered in tarps and overgrowth. The SUV slowed to a halt. Ilsa stepped out first, brushing leaves from her coat. 2 armed guards emerged from the trees and moved to open the back door. Maya stepped down slowly. Her legs were stiff, her wrists still bound, but her eyes were defiant. They were led into the main corridor walls covered in rust-stained medical tiles, overhead lights flickering. The deeper they went, the more modern the interior became. Old bones, new tech. Maya's stomach churned. They entered a clean room. The air was frigid, purified. Monitors lined the walls. A woman in a lab coat greeted them. This is Dr. Laurent, Ilsa said. She's been waiting to meet you. Dr. Laurent bent down to Maya's eye level. Her tone was oddly kind. You're very brave, Maya. What we're about to do, it'll help a lot of people. You're special, the kind of special that saves lives. Maya didn't blink. I'm not here to save anyone for you. Ilsa laughed. Oh, Maya, still clinging to your father's fantasies. Don't worry. This won't hurt. Much. Dr. Laurent turned to the monitor. A file labeled Maya, sequence protocol appeared. Below it, a string of genome maps, reaction indexes, and dosage tables. Ilsa looked at Maya. We're going to take a small blood sample. That's all. Maya's eyes scanned the room. Her fingers curled and uncurled. Get on the chair, the guard barked. But before Maya moved, the building shuddered. A low tremor rolled through the walls. A thump, then another. Then a siren screamed to life. Unauthorized aircraft landing, a voice shouted from the overhead speakers. Ilsa spun toward the hallway. No, she hissed. Dr. Laurent's eyes widened. They found us? A crash. The sound of boots. Gunfire echoed through the corridor. Maya stared at the door as it burst open. Elliot stepped through, flanked by 2 armed agents. His tuxedo was torn, dirt on his cuffs, fury in his eyes. Step away from her, he growled. Ilsa reached for something in her coat. Elliot raised his hand. Don't. She paused. You came alone? She sneered. No, he said. I brought every whisper you ever tried to bury. He tossed the tablet onto the floor. It blinked to life-projecting files, evidence, security footage, and one voice recording. Ilsa Vaughn, the 7th of June. If the girl screams, don't stop. We need the sample. Her father's opinion is irrelevant now. The lab fell silent. Dr. Laurent stepped back. Elliot's men stormed in, securing the guards. Ilsa was disarmed and restrained. Maya ran to Elliot. He dropped to his knees and held her tightly. I knew you'd come, she whispered. I'll always come, he said. Hours later, the facility was under federal lockdown. Ilsa was in custody. Dr. Laurent had agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. The files Elliot recovered were enough to launch a congressional investigation. But more than that, Maya was safe. Back at the lake house, wrapped in a wool blanket beside a crackling fireplace, she looked up at Elliot. Will they come again? She asked. He didn't lie. Maybe, but next time, we won't be alone. She nodded. I don't want to be special anymore. I just want to be normal. Elliot touched her cheek. You're not normal, Maya. You're better. Because even when you were scared, you told the truth. You saved me. You saved everyone in that ballroom. She looked down. But I couldn't save Mom. He paused, then said gently, your mother would have been proud. And wherever she is, she's watching you grow into something strong. Maya nodded slowly, and for the first time since the wedding that never was, she let herself rest. Outside, the snow had started to fall. Quiet, pure, the kind of snow that muffled the past and made room for something new. Justice, at last, had found its way through the trees. The following morning, The first light of dawn crept in through the cabin's wooden blinds. Maya lay curled on the couch, a thick knitted blanket wrapped around her small frame. Her breathing was steady, but not deep. She wasn't asleep. Not fully. There was a particular kind of wakefulness that came after terror, a state where the mind refused to rest even when the body begged for it. Elliot stood in the kitchen, watching the coffee percolate. His tuxedo from the aborted wedding was long gone, replaced with a simple flannel shirt and worn jeans. But his posture remained sharp, controlled. He hadn't slept either. Across the room, Agent Fields was reviewing the forensics report that had just come in from Quantico. His glasses slid down his nose as he read, face grim. She was planning this for years, Fields muttered. Ilsa had offshore labs, former military assets, encrypted cloud databases under pseudonyms. She built a damn empire out of stolen research and buried ethics. Elliot didn't answer. He poured a mug of coffee and set it gently on the table beside Maya, not disturbing her. But her eyes blinked open anyway. "Good morning," she whispered. He crouched beside her. "Morning, brave girl. You sleep at all?" "A little," she said, pulling the blanket tighter. It was quiet. "That's a start," he said, offering a faint smile. "I made breakfast. There's fruit, toast. No science experiments, I promise." She let out a tired chuckle. "Are we safe here?" "For now," Elliot replied. "But there's more we need to talk about. When you're ready." Maya sat up slowly, brushing hair from her face. Her eyes had dark circles, but they were focused. "I want to know everything." Elliot nodded. He turned to Fields. "Let's begin." An hour later, the living room had transformed into a war room. Papers, photos, and maps were spread across the floor and coffee table. Maya sat between them, listening intently. Elliot pointed to a document showing a chart titled Genetic Phase Transfer Subject M. "Maya, you remember when your mom used to take you to that pediatric research clinic in Chicago?" Elliot asked gently. Maya nodded. "She said it was just to check my immune system." It wasn't a lie," Elliot said. "But it wasn't the full truth either. Your mom was working with a private team back then, one that focused on inherited immunity and gene anomalies. They discovered your DNA had a rare pattern, something no one had seen before. Something Ilsa wanted," Maya whispered. Elliot continued. "She used your mother's trust. And later, she used me. I didn't know. Not then. I believed she loved me, that she wanted to help you. But when your mother died, Ilsa made sure the research was never published. She buried it, claimed you were unstable, too fragile to go through more trials. But what she really wanted was control." Agent Fields added, "With your blood, Ilsa believed she could create immunity-based treatments that governments would kill for. Imagine a world where soldiers never got sick, where viruses had no effect. If you control that, you control the future." Maya stared at the photos of the old lab. The wires, the cold steel, the silent machines humming in the dark. But why poison him at the wedding? Why now? "Because," Elliot said, "she knew I was getting too close, that I'd found files she thought I deleted years ago. She wanted to silence me before I made them public. The wedding was just a front. It was always her exit plan." Maya's hand clenched the edge of the blanket. "And she would have let me die, too." Elliot swallowed. "She didn't see you as a child anymore. Only data." There was a long silence. Then Maya asked, "So what do we do now?" Fields and Elliot exchanged a look. Then Elliot said, "We go public." By evening, the sun dipped low over Lake Champlain. The makeshift cabin felt smaller now, as tension built again like a storm waiting offshore. Elliot sat in front of a microphone, his voice steady but raw, recording the message that would shake corridors far beyond the woods. "To the American people," he began, "I am Elliot Vance. For years, I believed in a vision of medicine that could change the world, but in the wrong hands, that vision became a weapon. I was deceived and nearly destroyed, but my daughter saved me. And now, I owe Heron all of you the truth." He laid out the evidence, the gene manipulation trials, the unregistered experiments, the attempted murder, the files Ilsa had hidden. Meanwhile, Maya helped Agent Fields upload the data packet to a secured press portal. She watched the progress bar climb toward 100%. "You're not scared?" Fields asked her. Maya nodded. "I am, but scared people still have to do the right thing." The audio broadcast went live on every major outlet just after 7 p.m. Within hours, the story dominated headlines. Billionaire exposes genetic exploitation scandal, read one. Girl who stopped the wedding uncovers medical crime ring, said another. But amidst the media storm, Maya received something unexpected. A letter. It was handwritten, folded neatly inside a plain white envelope. She opened it on the porch beneath the stars, the porch light flickering softly. Elliot watched from inside but didn't intrude. The letter was from Ilsa. It read, Maya, you think you've won. But the truth is more complicated than what you believe. I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to preserve the legacy your mother and I started. One day, when the world understands what we tried to do, they'll thank us. Until then, you'll always wonder, what if you had let me finish what I started? You carry more than you know. Maya folded the letter without flinching. She still thinks she's right. Elliot joined her on the porch. She always did. Maya looked up. Do you think she was ever really in love with you? Elliot sighed. I think she was in love with what I represented. A shortcut to legitimacy, a way to stay close to the asset. Meh, Maya said quietly. You, he said, touching her hand. But I'm done letting people define you that way. From now on, you're not the subject of anyone's experiment. You're just Maya. She smiled faintly. Just Maya sounds kind of amazing. The next day, Elliot and Maya walked along the lakeshore as mist lifted from the water. Ducks glided past. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Everything felt possible again. You know this doesn't end here, Elliot said. There'll be hearings, investigations, maybe even people who want to challenge what we exposed. I know, Maya said, but this time, I won't be scared to speak. He looked at her, truly looked. Not as a protector, not as a broken man, but as a father. One who had almost lost everything and had somehow gained more. She tried to erase your mother's work, Elliot said. But you carried it forward, with your heart. She gave me that, Maya said. Mom always said the truth never needs to scream. It just waits. They paused. The wind picked up. Then Maya added, but sometimes, it needs to yell really loud in a wedding hall. Elliot laughed. It wasn't over. They knew that. But the shadows had lifted, at least for now. And as father and daughter stood side by side, watching the sunrise shimmer across the lake, it wasn't fear that filled their hearts anymore. It was fire, and faith, and the promise that no secret would stay buried forever. It began with a click barely audible, yet ominous in the quiet hallway of the hotel suite. Maya looked up from her notebook as Elliot hung up a call with the Department of Justice. His face was unreadable, but his eyes carried the weight of what he had just heard. They're launching a formal inquiry, he said. The Attorney General wants to fast-track a federal investigation. Ilsa's going to be indicted. Maya let out a long, slow breath. Finally, but Elliot didn't respond right away. He crossed the room and turned on the television. The screen flickered to a breaking news alert. A reporter stood in front of a burning biotech lab just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Confirmed arson. This lab, believed to be linked to off-the-record pharmaceutical trials, was set ablaze late last night. Several documents have been destroyed, including... Elliot muted the television. That was one of Ilsa's backup facilities. They're scrubbing evidence, Maya whispered. Fast, he said grimly. Faster than we expected. Agent Fields, who had flown back into town that morning, entered the suite just then, holding a file thick with printed emails and bank transfers. Ilsa's network is larger than we thought. Offshore accounts, shell companies in Belize, the Caymans, and one we're still tracking through Switzerland. Does she know we're still moving forward? Maya asked. Fields nodded. She knows. And she's not running. She's circling the wagons, trying to control the fallout. Maya stood up. So what now? Do we just wait? No, Elliot said, his voice quiet but firm. Now we push harder. That afternoon, Maya and Elliot were escorted to a closed-door congressional hearing in D.C. The air inside the chamber was tense, and the room was filled with suited officials, legal observers, and a few high-ranking federal officers. Cameras were not allowed. But the eyes that bore down on them were just as invasive. Elliot sat straight, hands clasped, while Maya remained calm but alert at his side. Across from them, A long wooden desk seated a panel of senators, some curious, others skeptical, and a few visibly irritated. Senator Gracie, a silver-haired figure with sharp eyes and a tone that could slice steel, leaned forward. "Mr. Vance, your testimony asserts that your former fiancé attempted to poison you and manipulate classified biomedical data for personal gain. And this accusation hinges in large part on the testimony of a child, your daughter." Elliot's jaw tightened. "With respect, Senator, my daughter is not just a child. She's the victim of one of the most calculated acts of medical exploitation in this country's history, and her warning saved my life." Gracie blinked. "And the proof?" Maya slid a folder across the table before Elliot could speak. "This contains timestamps, genetic tracking files, and recorded conversations from Ilsa's encrypted server. We recovered them through a private forensic team 2 weeks ago." The senator took the folder but didn't open it right away. "Miss Vance," she said slowly, "I hope you understand the gravity of what you've set into motion." "I do," Maya said clearly. "But what Ilsa did to Mato other children should never happen again. That's what matters." The room fell silent. One of the younger senators, Senator Morales, finally reached for the folder and began leafing through it. He raised his brows, visibly disturbed. "This is not conjecture," he murmured. "This is a playbook for biological warfare." That changed the room. Rapid scribbling started from aides. Papers shuffled. Phones vibrated discreetly. And in that moment, the tide began to turn. Later that night, back in the hotel, Maya sat by the window with a cup of cocoa, staring at the Capitol building glowing in the distance. The city felt heavy, like it carried the weight of 1,000 untold truths. Elliot stepped in from the adjoining room. "You were amazing today," he said. She didn't smile. "I didn't feel amazing. I felt small, like I was screaming into a cave." He sat beside her. "But you were heard." Maya finally looked at him. "Do you ever feel like we're too late? That maybe some people already got hurt because we didn't stop this sooner?" Elliot reached for her hand. "Yes, I feel that every day. But if we carry that guilt forever, we'll never be able to do anything right. We do what we can now, and we make it count." Just then, a knock on the hotel door interrupted the quiet. Elliot answered, expecting Fields, but instead, a young woman stood there. African-American, early 30s, dressed in a crisp military uniform. Her name tag read, Lieutenant Carmen Holloway. "Mr. Vance, I'm with the Army's Ethics Review Board," she said, her tone respectful. "I've been instructed to personally thank you, and your daughter." Maya stepped forward, confused. "Lieutenant," Holloway continued, "my sister was one of Ilsa's early test subjects. We thought she died from complications in a flu trial. Turns out, the entire project was falsified. Your testimony reopened her case." Maya's mouth parted. "I didn't know there were others." There are," Holloway said softly. "And now, thanks to you, they're going to be seen." She handed Maya a small black envelope. Inside was a folded piece of stationery and a patch. The patch was a golden olive branch, encircling the words, "Valor through truth." "Honor badge," Holloway said. "Unofficial, but earned." Maya held it in her palm. For the first time since that horrible day at the wedding, tears welled in her eyes. Not from fear but from recognition. But just as one door opened, another threatened to slam shut. The next morning, Elliot's phone buzzed with a coded message. "She's moving. Zurich. The account's draining." Ilsa was escaping. Fields met them in the lobby 20 minutes later. "Private jet filed under a shell corporation just took off from Geneva. She's gone off radar, but our contacts in Interpol are watching. She's not slipping away forever. But she's still ahead of us," Elliot muttered. "Always one step." Maybe not anymore," Maya said suddenly. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a flash drive. "I didn't tell you everything I found," she said quietly. "There's one last folder, hidden inside the video file. Mom used to hide her journal entries the same way, embedding data in static frames." Elliot took the drive, surprised. Fields plugged it into his laptop and ran a deep decrypt. After several minutes, a file popped up with a blinking red icon. Valkyrie 9 Transfer Protocols. Fields leaned in. "Oh my God, this isn't just about gene trials. It's a trade list. They were planning to sell this to defense contractors." Maya stared at the screen. That's why she didn't run. She was waiting for the deal to close. Elliot's voice dropped. We have to stop it. Now. Fields nodded, already dialing. I'll alert Homeland. We need to move fast. This goes above national crime. It's a matter of security. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. From the tragedy of one girl's blood to a silent war between truth and power. As Maya stood beside her father, watching as the world turned toward chaos again, she whispered, "Dad, this doesn't end, does it?" He looked down at her, his eyes fierce but kind. "Number, but neither do we." And in the distance, the sky began to darken, not with fear, but with purpose. Because this time, they weren't alone. The truth had started to echo, and its voice was getting louder. It was nearly midnight when the plane touched down at Andrews Air Force Base. The sky above washed in a heavy blue-black, the kind that seemed to press down on everything beneath it. Maya sat quietly beside her father in the back of the unmarked SUV as it sped through the empty highway, escorted front and rear by government vehicles. The flash drive she had given them, the one with the Valkyrie 9 files, was no longer just evidence. It was a detonator. Ilsa's plan wasn't just about controlling biomedical data or manipulating her way into marriage and wealth. She had been selling access to cutting-edge DNA weaponization, sequencing specific pathogens, quiet assassins disguised as cures. And now, someone out there was trying to buy it, and someone else was trying to stop it. "Where are we going?" Maya asked finally, her voice soft in the dark. Elliot leaned forward to speak with the agent driving. "The safe house outside Arlington. The federal task force will coordinate from there until the international team locks the buyer's location." Maya looked out the window. "Do you think it'll work?" Elliot didn't answer right away. He reached out and took her hand. "We're going to try." The safe house was not what Maya expected. It looked like an old farmhouse, tucked behind pine trees, with peeling shutters and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Inside, however, it was a fortress: armored doors, surveillance screens, encrypted radios humming softly in the background. Maya was shown to a small upstairs room with a quilted bedspread and a window overlooking the woods. There, for the first time in days, she fell asleep. But her dreams were uneasy. She dreamt of her mother, standing beneath a rain-streaked glass dome, holding out a handkerchief. "Don't let them take it," she said, her voice echoing. "Don't let them silence what's already speaking." When Maya woke, her palms were sweating. The sun hadn't risen yet. Downstairs, Elliot and Agent Fields were already up, faces drawn tight with fatigue. Coffee steamed on the table beside an open laptop showing live drone feeds over Zurich. A red dot blinked over a private hangar. "They've got the plane," Fields said. "Ilsa's buyer was set to meet her there tonight, but she hasn't shown." "She's playing the clock," Elliot muttered, "waiting for us to blink." Fields tapped a key and brought up a second feed. "That's where we pull the plug." He turned the screen toward Maya. A building appeared, cold and industrial, with a sprawl of shipping containers and armed guards outside. "That's the delivery site, her fallback option. We intercepted chatter this morning. She's planning to move the data physically, no more online transfers." Maya narrowed her eyes. "So if we stop the truck, we stop everything." By noon, the team had mobilized. 2 black vans, 3 plain sedans, and an aerial drone tracked the route from the warehouse. Inside one of the vans, Maya sat beside a young analyst named Roy. He was fresh-faced, maybe 25, but his fingers danced over the tablet like a concert pianist. 2 minutes to intercept," he said. "The convoy just passed Route 56. Elliot was in the lead car with Fields and a tactical team. Through her earpiece, Maya could hear the calm, clipped orders being issued. "Approach on my signal. Box formation. Disable the lead engine. We want them alive." The moment came fast. On the narrow country road just past a bend, the convoy emerged 3 box trucks and a black SUV. Fields gave the signal. In an instant, the vans surged forward. Tires screeched. Smoke bloomed from the back wheels of the SUV as it tried to swerve away, but Elliot's car was already there, cutting it off. The tactical team surrounded the trucks. Armed agents stormed the cabs, pulled the drivers out. Within 90 seconds, it was over. Roy whistled low. That was smooth, but Maya wasn't smiling. She knew this wasn't the end, and she was right. Inside the last truck, locked in a titanium case, was not only a backup of Valkyrie 9 but also blood samples. Dozens of them, carefully labeled, catalogued, and chilled. Fields examined them with a cold stare. This is insurance. If the data was destroyed, the samples were her real currency. You can't patent life, but you can steal it. Maya couldn't stop staring at the vials. One of them had her name. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and held it up to the light. Hair blood, hair history, hair body, turned into a product. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she looked at Fields and asked, "Can we destroy them?" "We have to log them first," he said. "Chain of evidence. But after that, yes. Maya nodded. Then do it." That night, Ilse resurfaced. Not in Zurich, not in hiding. On television, a pre-recorded video played across several networks simultaneously. She looked immaculate, perfect hair, cool voice, wearing a white blazer and that same smug, untouched expression that haunted Maya's memory. "America," she said. "I know there are rumors about my work, accusations, falsehoods, betrayals. Let me be clear, I have always pursued the betterment of humanity. Some will call it ambition. I call it obligation, but there are those who fear progress, who fear women like me, strong, unrelenting, disruptive." Elliot threw the remote across the room, cracking the wall. Maya didn't flinch. Ilse continued, her voice colder now. "If I am pursued, if I am prosecuted, know this. The knowledge I hold does not die with me. Others hold it now. And what you fear will become what you depend on. That is the future." The screen went black. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Maya stood. She walked to the window, staring out at the stillness of the dark field beyond the safe house. "She's not just running," Maya said. "She's warning us. She thinks we'll be forced to come back to her someday." Elliot stepped behind her. "Then we make sure that day never comes." "How?" she whispered. He looked at her reflection in the glass. "We make the truth louder than her threats." The next morning, Maya asked to go somewhere. They drove out to a quiet chapel near her old school, where her mother's ashes had been scattered 5 years earlier. A simple memorial stone sat under a willow tree, barely visible from the road. Maya knelt down and placed a small note there. Folded paper, a child's handwriting still scribbled beneath the newer script. She whispered something that only the wind heard. Elliot waited at a respectful distance, hands in his pockets, eyes cast down. After a while, Maya walked back and stood beside him. "I'm ready." "For what?" "To tell my story, all of it." He looked at her. "Are you sure?" She nodded. She used silence like a weapon. "I won't." 3 days later, Maya sat under studio lights, a microphone clipped to her collar, across from a radio host known for her unflinching interviews. The walls were lined with acoustic foam, but the words they spoke would travel far beyond them. "And your name?" the host asked gently. "Maya Vance," she replied, her voice steady. "And why are you here?" Maya took a breath. And then, slowly, she began. "I was 6 when I was first given something I didn't understand. A vitamin, they said. A special one. I was 8 when I stopped feeling my hands in the morning. 9 when I started asking questions." Her voice, quiet but firm, echoed through the airwaves. And across the country, people listened. In church parking lots, in kitchen radios, in long-haul trucks. The story had begun with a whisper in a wedding hall. Now, it was a roar. And Mayathe, a little girl who once cried out for someone to believe her, had become the voice that would not be silenced. Not anymore. The following week brought no calm. Maya's voice, broadcast to millions, had ignited a firestorm. Talk shows dissected her words. News panels argued over the ethics. Anonymous sources came forward with more Stories Lab technicians, former patients, even quiet voices from inside Valkyrie's outer rings. The name Ilse Hart had become synonymous with betrayal. But for Maya, none of that felt like victory, because Ilse was still out there. Elliot watched the media frenzy unfold with a guarded distance. He had learned long ago that public outrage burned fast and died faster. What they needed wasn't just noise. They needed action, accountability, a lasting reckoning. That morning, as sunlight poured across the Georgetown safe house, Elliot walked into the kitchen with a phone pressed to his ear. "She's resurfaced," he said grimly. Maya looked up from her notebook. "Where?" "Greece. Offshore. A research vessel registered to one of her shell companies. Satellite picked up a woman matching her profile boarding a helicopter last night. Maya stood. Then why are we still here? Because the government can't move fast enough. Not without creating international tension. Elliot paused. But we can. Maya's eyes narrowed. You mean, privately? Elliot nodded. I've already reached out to an old friend in naval intelligence. He owes me. 3 days later, they were airborne again, this time on a quiet private jet headed toward the Ionian Sea. With them were Fields, Roy, and a quiet, broad-shouldered man named Torres, a former SEAL who now operated quietly in civilian shadow work. The flight was silent, the kind of silence that pulsed with intent. Maya sat beside the window, fingers curled in her lap. She had grown since the night she stopped a wedding with nothing more than a scream. But inside, part of her still trembled. Ilsa's world was no longer abstract. It wasn't science fiction. It was real, cruel, and hidden behind polished smiles and clean labs. And Maya was walking directly into its heart. When they landed in Kefalonia, the air smelled of salt and olives. A black jeep met them at the airstrip, driven by a local operative Torres trusted. They didn't speak much. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they reached the coast. The vessel sat like a shadow on the water, a sleek, modern research yacht, retrofitted for privacy and control. The windows were tinted black. 2 armed guards lingered at the gangway. From the brush, Fields whispered, "We're not going in loud. We use Maya." "What?" Elliot turned sharply. "She's the one Ilsa wants to control," Fields said. "Her face will lower defenses. Buy us time to get inside." Elliot hesitated. "It's too dangerous." But Maya was already unzipping her jacket. "She tried to silence me once," she said quietly. "Let's see if she dares try again." The guards weren't expecting a child. When Maya stepped into the clearing, her hair braided, her face calm, they didn't raise their weapons. One stepped forward, puzzled. "Where did you come from?" "I'm here for Dr. Hart," Maya said evenly. "She knows who I am." The man hesitated. Then he radioed something in Greek. Moments later, a voice crackled back. He nodded once and motioned Maya forward. Elliot clenched his fists from the shadows, but he didn't move. She was inside now, and the clock was ticking. The corridor smelled of antiseptic and engine oil. Maya followed the first guard through a narrow metal hallway. Her footsteps echoed too loudly in her ears. Every breath was deliberate. Then she saw her. Ilsa stood at the far end of a wide lab, dressed in white once more, though now with a touch more fatigue around her eyes. She turned slowly when the door opened. "Maya," she said, as if surprised. "You came. You expected me," Maya said coldly. Ilsa smiled faintly. "I hoped. You've always been braver than you know." "I'm not here for compliments," Maya said. "I'm here for justice." Ilsa tilted her head. "Is that what you think this is? A courtroom? You don't understand. They never let women like me build empires unless we bleed first." "You bled others," Maya snapped. "You used me." "I saved you," Ilsa said. "Don't rewrite the past. You were dying. I gave you something no one else dared. You lived." Maya's voice lowered. "At what cost?" Ilsa took a slow step forward. "Maya, I have work that needs finishing. You've already become the symbol. Let me give you the substance. The world will follow you. I'm not here to lead your cult." Ilsa's smile faded. Just then, the lights flickered. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Ilsa turned as Elliot and Torres burst through the door, weapons raised. Ilsa lifted both hands slowly. "Too late," she said. Fields burst into the control room, slamming his hand on the console. "Shut it down." A technician tried to run. Torres tackled him and handcuffed him in one motion. Maya stepped into the room behind them, eyes scanning the monitors. The yacht had begun transmitting a final data package to an offshore server and archive of the Valkyrie research, including names, locations, and experimental notes. The kind of leak that would unleash chaos if sold to the wrong hands. "It's uploading to a private server in Iceland," Roy said, scanning the codes. "We've got 90 seconds. "Kill the power," Elliot ordered. Roy hesitated. "That'll wipe everything." Maya stepped forward. "Do it." The cabin went black. The engine died. The lights, the fans, the very hum of electricity vanished. For a moment, The world was silent utterly, unnaturally still. Then emergency lights blinked on. Ilsa stood in the center of the lab, hands still raised, no longer smiling. "You'll regret this," she said. Elliot approached her, cuffs in hand. "You already do." She didn't resist. That night, as they sailed the yacht back to port under escort, Maya sat on the top deck alone. She looked out over the waves, the stars above sharp and unblinking. Elliot joined her, handing her a blanket. "You did it," he said. "No," she replied. "We did." He sat beside her. "Ilsa's going to prison, and her research will be buried. But not forgotten," Maya said. "We can't forget. That's how it starts again." Elliot nodded slowly. "Then what do we do?" She looked at him, her eyes unwavering. "We build something better." 2 months later, Maya stood in front of a congressional committee. She was 15 now, composed, strong. "I stand here not because I want revenge," she said clearly, "but because I want truth to matter again. I want people to listen when a child says something is wrong. I want science to serve people, not power." The room fell silent. Then the chairman spoke, voice gravelly. "Miss Vance, what would you like this committee to do?" Maya took a breath. "Create a registry, protect experimental data, fund medical ethics panels, but most of all listen." She stepped back, and the room erupted in applause. Later that week, Maya returned to the quiet chapel beneath the willow tree. She stood alone this time, the wind brushing her cheek, a note in her hand. She knelt and placed it beside the stone again. This time, the handwriting was stronger. "Mom, I did it." "Ah," and the wind carried her whisper far beyond the trees. The echoes of Maya's words before Congress still rang in Elliot's mind as he stood outside the courthouse, watching the crowd gathering behind metal barricades. Reporters jostled for space, their breath visible in the cool morning air. Headlines had already declared the upcoming trial of Ilsa Hart as the medical ethics case of the decade. Inside the holding van parked discreetly to the side, Ilsa sat poised, her hands cuffed in front of her, chin lifted as if she were about to walk into a symposium rather than a federal courtroom. Even stripped of her designer wardrobe, and adorned only in a plain gray suit, there was still something chillingly composed about her, like a queen awaiting trial by fire. Elliot turned away before the marshals led her inside. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction of another look. Maya sat quietly in the witness room, her legs swinging slightly off the edge of the chair. She was dressed in navy blue, her curls tied back, and her eyes scanning the statement she had written, rewritten, and then rewritten again. Outside the frosted glass door, footsteps passed back and forth, but in her mind, it was silent. Only her mother's voice echoed. "You speak when it matters, baby. Not before, and not after." Elliot knocked gently and stepped inside. "They're ready when you are." She looked up. "Are you?" He gave a faint smile. "I've never been more nervous." Maya tucked the paper away and stood. "Good. Means we're still human." In the courtroom, the air was thick with attention. Every seat was filled. Lawyers shifted in expensive suits, and journalists scribbled notes feverishly. A panel of 12 jurors sat, stone-faced, under the fluorescent lights, the weight of history suddenly draped across their shoulders. Ilsa sat at the defense table, flanked by 3 attorneys. She glanced briefly toward Maya as she entered, but said nothing. No smirk, no recognition, just cold calculation. Maya walked steadily to the stand, her small form somehow filling the room with gravity. The prosecutor approached gently. "Miss Vance, can you tell us, in your own words, what happened on the day of your father's wedding?" And Maya began. She told them everything, not just about the handkerchief, but the months before, the subtle pain, the secrecy, the moments when she questioned her own instincts, how Ilsa had made her feel small in her own body, and powerful only when it suited the woman's ambitions. "She gave me medicine I never agreed to," Maya said, her voice clear. "She told my father it was for my condition, but it wasn't. It was for her research. I wasn't a daughter to her. I was a test subject." Gasps fluttered through the gallery. Ilsa's lawyer objected. Speculation, but the judge raised a hand. Overruled. "Continue, Miss Vance." And she did. She spoke for nearly an hour, and not once did her voice tremble. After the court recessed for lunch, Maya stepped into the hallway, shoulders drawn tight. "Proud of you," Elliot said, handing her a bottle of water. "I hated every second," she admitted. "But I meant all of it." He nodded. "That's why it mattered." A woman approached from across the Hololder. With silvering hair and deep-set eyes behind thick glasses, she held out a hand. "My name's Margaret Klein. I was a nurse in Valkyrie's Atlanta facility," she said softly. "Back in the early days. I didn't speak up. I should have, but after today," she swallowed. "You made me remember why I got into medicine in the first place." Maya looked at her for a moment, then reached out and hugged her. The defense tried to spin a different tale. They painted Ilsa as a misunderstood genius, a pioneer working outside broken systems, a woman willing to sacrifice comfort for innovation. They implied that Maya had misinterpreted, perhaps been manipulated by overprotective influences. But public sentiment had already turned. The story had outgrown the courtroom. Still, Ilsa remained composed through it all, never breaking, never blinking, until Fields took the stand. He'd spent the last weeks combing through deleted archives, whistleblower emails, and encrypted files. And when he began presenting internal memos, coded trial logs, and private voice messages between Ilsa and her financiers discussing dosage tolerances and liability avoidance, the courtroom changed. Even Ilsa's lawyers looked shaken. Fields ended his testimony with a sentence that silenced the room. "Genius doesn't excuse the use of children as guinea pigs. Not in America. Not ever." After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for 9 hours. 9 hours of waiting, pacing, praying. Maya and Elliot stayed in a quiet chamber, watching the clock hands circle until their eyes blurred. Neither spoke much. What was left to say? Finally, the bailiff knocked. "They've reached a verdict." Maya gripped Elliot's hand as they stepped back into the room. The hum of anticipation made her chest feel like it was full of bees. The foreman stood. "On the count of medical malpractice resulting in harm, we find the defendant, Dr. Ilsa Hart, guilty." Gasps. A cry somewhere in the gallery. A reporter's pen dropped and clattered to the floor. The judge didn't waste time. Sentencing would come later, but the message was clear. Ilsa Hart would not walk free again. As she was led away in handcuffs, for the first time, her expression faltered. Her eyes met Maya's not with anger, but with something that almost resembled fear or loss. Maya stared back, not triumphant, but steady. This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering. The weeks after the trial were quiet. Too quiet. Elliot tried to fill the silence with small projects, with repairs around the house, with long walks. But every time he passed Maya's room, he paused. She wasn't the same girl he'd met. She couldn't be. One evening, she came to him holding an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "My application," she said. "To what?" She smiled faintly. "The National Youth Bioethics Forum. They meet in D.C. every year. I want to help write guidelines for medical trials involving minors." He opened the envelope and scanned the form. "You'll be the youngest person there." "Probably." He looked up. "They won't know what hit them." She leaned against him. "I just want to make sure no other kid ever has to scream to be believed." Later that night, Maya stood alone at the mirror in her room. Her braids were undone, falling like soft threads around her face. She reached into her drawer and pulled out her mother's scarf, the same one Ilsa had once complimented coldly. It smelled faintly of lavender now, a scent she'd kept alive through memory alone. She wrapped it gently around her shoulders and stared into her reflection. Not a girl anymore, not just a survivor, but something quieter, stronger, a witness, a voice. And the storm that once threatened to consume her had taught her something lasting. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers, it endures, and it never, ever forgets. Spring came slowly that year. The kind of spring that doesn't burst through the cold but peels it back one layer at a time. In the neighborhood where Elliot and Maya lived, dogwoods started blooming along the sidewalks, and people began leaving their windows open again, trusting the air to be gentle. It had been 3 months since Ilsa Hart was sentenced to 30 years without parole. Her name still came up now and then in op-eds, in university ethics lectures, in uncomfortable dinner conversations, but it had begun to fade, as all names eventually do. What lingered instead was the shift Maya had set in motion: policy reviews, internal investigations, a surge of grant funds redirected from experimental labs toward patient advocacy. But Maya didn't talk much about that. She spent her days between school and the piano, between phone calls with her mentor from the ethics forum and her weekend volunteering shifts at the community health center. Her voice had grown quieter, not from fear, but from purpose, like someone who no longer needed to prove she could speak because now the world had started listening. One evening, Elliot returned from work to find her in the backyard, sitting cross-legged in the grass with a large envelope beside her. He approached slowly. "That looks serious." Maya held it out wordlessly. He sat beside her, took the envelope, and slid the contents out. At the top of the page was the seal of Harvard University. Below that, an acceptance letter, full scholarship, pre-medical bioethics track. Elliot blinked, then laughed, then blinked again. "I guess, congratulations feels too small." She shrugged, though her smile betrayed her pride. "They said they read my forum essay and the congressional testimony, said it's the kind of voice they want to shape the future." He looked at her, eyes softening. "You already are." They sat there for a while, just breathing, the smell of cut grass, the faint trill of a mockingbird nearby, the early stars beginning to show. "You scared me that day," Elliot said after a pause. "At the wedding, when you yelled like that, my first thought was this poor kid just doesn't want her dad to move on." Maya nodded. "I don't blame you. I should have known better." You did eventually," she said. "You believed me when it mattered." They shared a long look. No apologies left, no explanations needed. Just the quiet bond between a man and a girl who had both learned the cost of silence and the strength of choosing otherwise. The night before Maya's graduation, they gathered in the small living room where Elliot had first offered her a cup of cocoa and an open heart. Close friends, neighbors, even a few folks from the ethics forum zoomed in to toast her success. Someone brought lemon bars. Someone else brought a framed photo of Maya in front of the courthouse. She stood near the window, clutching her graduation cap, staring at it like it was something foreign. "You okay?" a familiar voice asked. It was Fields. He had flown in from D.C. just for the day, in his usual corduroy jacket and scuffed leather shoes. "I don't know if I'm ready," Maya confessed. "For Harvard. For all of it." He leaned against the windowsill. "No one's ever ready, Maya. Not really. We just step forward and pretend until it's true." She let out a shaky laugh. "That's comforting." He grinned. "Good. Now, are you going to tell me about the speech you're giving tomorrow?" Maya rolled her eyes. "It's not a big deal. It is to us." She hesitated. "It's about memory, about what we carry." He raised an eyebrow. "And how it can either crush you or guide you." Fields nodded slowly. "Then you've already said more than most people ever will." The ceremony was held outdoors, under a canopy of elms. Families filled the folding chairs, clapping for names called, tears rolling down cheeks as tassels turned. When Maya was called to the stage, the crowd rose before she even spoke. She took the podium, the sunlight warming her shoulders. "My name is Maya Vance," she began, "and I am here not because I planned every step right, but because someone believed me at the moment it mattered most." A hush fell over the lawn. 2 years ago, I was just a girl holding a piece of evidence in her hand, praying someone would look at it. I wasn't brave. I was terrified. But I've learned something since then. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it shows up quietly in a hand on your shoulder, in a voice that says, "I believe you," in a door that opens when others would rather slam it shut. She paused. "And sometimes, justice is a little black girl in a blue dress who refuses to sit down." The applause came slowly at first, and then it built like rain gathering before a storm. But this time, it was not a storm of fear. It was thunder for hope. Afterward, she walked off stage and found Elliot waiting. He didn't say anything at first, just wrapped her in the tightest, longest hug he'd ever given. "Your mom would have been proud," he whispered. Maya closed her eyes. "I hope so." "She would," he said again. "I know it." Years later, people would still tell Maya they remembered that speech, that moment. Some would approach her at conferences or in hospitals, saying they entered their field because of her. She would smile, shake hands, thank them. But she never stopped remembering where it all began, not with a courtroom, not with a handkerchief, not even with a scream, but with the quiet choice to speak, to risk being doubted, to stand when standing meant everything. And when she would walk the halls of the hospital, she'd later help lead now with her name etched on a placard outside the pediatric ethics department. She carried in her pocket not a stethoscope or ID card, but a folded photo of her, Elliot, arms around each other on that graduation day. On the back, in her handwriting, "For the man who taught me what it means to be believed, and for the silence we broke together. Because justice may sleep, but it always wakes. And when it does, it remembers who stayed awake for it."